Hey everyone, either welcome back or welcome to my channel, and in today's video I want to share my MRI experience. This is actually a requested video from one of you, so before I get into any more details, time for the intro.
Hey everyone, my name is Ashley Stewart. Back in 2018, I was diagnosed with IIH. The long form of this name is called idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Some of you may also know this condition by its older names, either pseudotumor cerebri or benign intracranial hypertension. So if you're curious to learn more about what it's like to live with this condition, or what those of us living with this condition would like you to know, then I strongly encourage you to watch on. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell down below so that you get updated about further videos. I upload new content every Monday and Thursday afternoon.
My MRI experience was actually quite straightforward, especially when you compare the lumbar puncture and then having a complication from that and having to have a blood patch done. My lumbar puncture is one of the most scariest times of my life, and it's the most scared I've been for any medical procedure, but my MRI was actually just as equally as scary for me because I had never had an MRI before, and so I was nervous. I also am slightly claustrophobic, so it was a scary thought about being put into a very tight space for 25 minutes. I don't really know what the wait time is for you guys in the United States, but for me, the request for my MRI was put in May, and I got it in July. This is actually pretty fast. I know that it felt like it was taking forever to get a date, but looking back, I know it could have been much, much longer. I'm glad that it wasn't because I don't know how long I would have had with my vision before I would have started losing my vision, possibly to the point where they may not have been able to save it. I still think they caught my papilledema quite early. So this is the swelling of the optic nerves, which is one of the major complications of not having IIH diagnosed and treated as promptly as possible. But you're always told to go to the emergency room if you ever have any sudden vision changes. I don't know exactly about the MRI testing, if it's done based upon triage, but most everything in Canada is a triage-based system. People who have more urgent matters will have their tests pushed up, and then the other ones will wait a little bit longer, is how it's supposed to work. If you want to have sedation for your MRI, so this is when they put you to sleep for it, it's a longer wait than if you can do it being awake. For me, I just did it at a imaging place, so they didn't actually put me under for it, so it was pretty straightforward. I wasn't having any dye put in or contrast, for those of you who have had contrast done. I wasn't being sedated for it, so it was pretty much just me going in there and being in the machine while they got the imaging done, and then going home after I was finished. The nice thing was, the day that I had my MRI done, I had it on a Friday evening. It's amazing how you remember these details because of sometimes how scary it can be. But I had mine done on a Friday evening, and I actually met my neurologist on the day that I had the MRI. So that was pretty nice. During the MRI, it was definitely tight in the machine. So I have actually had MRI, CT scans, and x-rays now. If I just had to compare those three, my MRI is definitely the scariest, even though I had contrast with my CT. I've had a CT scan before because back in 2012, actually November of 2012, I had symptoms of appendicitis. And so I was given a CT scan for that to see if I actually did have appendicitis. They didn't really want to do surgery, and I didn't really want to have surgery done unless they actually found out my appendix was inflamed, and the best way that they could tell was to do the CT scan. For the MRI, I was given earplugs and was basically had to hold as still as I could for 20 to 25 minutes. Now that would probably be just me meditating, but at that time, that was the longest 20 to 25 minutes of my life. That was a really, really long time. Plus, you have what sounds like construction site noises. When I got my MRI results, that's kind of when the doctors had a plan at that point because they found signs of intracranial hypertension on the MRI. I was relieved because of the fact that they had been throwing around MS and brain tumor. To be honest, I felt so free after getting those MRI results because I finally had an answer and finally had an objective test to tell me this isn't just something that my mind is making up. This is actually something that is actually happening. And there's a medical reason why I've been feeling the way I've been feeling for the past several months. I just didn't realize quite what that meant at the time because I had never heard of intracranial hypertension. I didn't really understand the implications that would be basically in the future for me as a result of living with this chronic invisible illness. So, in a way, it was freeing, but you know, in a way, I miss life before that moment. I've included a picture of this IIH diagnosis process, just kind of a reference point to the MRI and the information that's about to follow in the video. So, the MRI was the first step for them for me, but they didn't actually know what to expect off of the MRI. So once they were given that the MRI showed signs of intracranial hypertension, they then followed up with the ophthalmology exam and the lumbar puncture. Now, this picture is very simplified, and I've left out the details as to why they've done each of these, but I have explained why they have done each of these in other videos and in previous topics where I've discussed the diagnosis process for IIH. It would take almost a full month after I had my initial MRI and was given intracranial hypertension before I got my official diagnosis of idiopathic intracranial hypertension because I needed to do a full ophthalmological exam. Once they did the lumbar puncture, they had to show that the opening pressure was high and that the contents of the cerebrospinal fluid or CSF was normal because they needed to rule out every single possibility for a high opening pressure, intracranial pressure, besides what is already known to be possible causes. And once that was determined, they determined it as idiopathic from there. And I actually fit the criteria pretty much perfectly at the time because I was obese, I was a woman of childbearing age. I found it very straightforward, unlike my lumbar puncture, which actually the lumbar puncture was very straightforward itself. It's just that I had that complication where I had to have the blood patch done. So, other than that, I think everything went quite well. It's just sometimes you have complications that arise from doing certain procedures, and I guess just with my lumbar puncture I had that happen, but I had no real issues with the MRI. It was just very, very difficult to lay that still and stay calm. I know I was pretty stressed out while in the machine just because it was so tight. There was no way to see out of the machine either, so you were basically surrounded by an entire, it looked completely white in there. Plus, when they do a brain scan, they have to put this helmet on you, so you really feel enclosed. Like for some things, you don't really have to go right into the full machine, but Because it's a brain scan, they have to put you pretty much right into the full machine and they have to put you in a helmet. I think most people would find it scary. I'm happy that I didn't have to be in there any longer than I was. It was definitely the longest 20 to 25 minutes of my life just because I was not used to, at that point, sitting or lying still for that long. If you guys have any questions or comments that you'd like to add to this video, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And as for now, that's it for today. Bye everyone!